And welcome back. So one of the things that you're going to be doing a lot in this class is you're going to be writing sentences. Now, this can often be very tricky for students who have not had any kind of grammar lessons in a long time. And for many of you, those grammar lessons were all the way back in elementary school. So it's hard to learn a comparable system, right? That is to say, grammar in another language when you are no longer familiar with the grammar in your own language. One of the things that we'll kind of look at here is how to put sentences together in Spanish and what is the natural word order in Spanish. Word order is something that is often not discussed whenever we think about learning another language, but it's something that's actually incredibly important. Word order is something that is natural and individual and unique to each language. So you learned a word order whenever you were learning English, and now when you learn Spanish, you'll learn a different type of word order. But if you learned another foreign language, say German or French or Italian, that language would have a different type of word order than even the word order that you're learning here for Spanish, because the idea of word order is something that is very unique to each individual language. So it's something to kind of think about as you go about learning the language, that the way that you naturally would put sentences together now in English is not at all or ever probably going to be the way that you would put things together in Spanish. And this is just because word order, it is something that is unique to each language. It's not good or bad or quantitative or qualitative. It's just what is. So here's some terminology that you may or may not remember, and I have the Spanish version over here, right, from whenever you were learning grammar in English. So here we have subject, which in Spanish is sujeto, verb, which in Spanish is verbo, direct or indirect object, which is objetivo directo, objetivo indirecto in Spanish. This is often called the complement or complemento. So here are some examples for us to look at that have to do with word order in English. Now in English, we have a subject, verb, direct object, indirect object, or complement word order. So in English language sentences, the subject will always be first. In part, this is because verbs are subject dependent in English. And in that, they are dependent in that we don't always know who is doing the action unless the subject is present. So for example, when I say, I speak, you speak, he speaks, we speak, of those 4 different versions of speak, 3 of them have the exact same grammatical format. However, the way that I know who is doing the action of speaking is with the subject. If I say I speak, I know I'm the one doing the action. If I say we speak, I know we is the one doing the action. That's how I know who's doing the action. In Spanish, this is going to be a little bit different, and we'll look at that in just a second. Now, if we look at these sentences, these kind of simple sentences that I've given as examples here, let's break each one apart. Tom rolled the ball to Freddie. So here we have a subject, right, Tom, and then we have him doing an action, right, that's rolling, and then we have the ball to Freddie, which would be considered the complement in this sentence. Then we have Tom rolled and threw the ball, right? Here we have one subject, but 2 actions. Now, in English, when we have one subject, but 2 actions and a conjunction, that's what this word and is, right? And, but, thus, or, those are all conjunctions. When we have a conjunction, but we have the same subject and 2 different actions, we have no comma because we have one subject doing 2 actions, so there's no need for a comma. However, in our next sentence, right, Tom rolled the ball and Freddie threw it, there are 2 subjects, 2 verbs, and 1 conjunction. So because there are 2 subjects and 2 different verbs, there would be a comma for the conjunction. This is actually not exactly how this works in Spanish, and I'll explain in a minute. The bright green house is mine. Now you notice that in English, all the descriptive words come before the noun. Bright and green are descriptive words that talk about house. These descriptive words, we call them adjectives. I know you didn't sign up for an English language grammar lessons, but it is important so that you can kind of know how to put together sentences in Spanish. You'll notice that they come here before the noun. Now let's look at how this would work in Spanish if we were thinking about writing a simple sentence. Here we have, Mari Carmen compra un suéter. So here we have something similar to English, right? We have a subject and then a verb and then a complement. So that's kind of similar. And in fact, actually, this is one possibility in Spanish, right? In Spanish, we can also have simple order of subject, verb, complement. That is completely possible. Now, in Spanish, we can also have two other types of sentences that are probably not sentences that you would use, but they are possibilities. In Spanish, you can also have verb, subject, reversal, right? So the verb can come first and the subject can come sometime later after the complement even sometimes. So there are sentences where the verb is there and you don't even, maybe, or you're not always sure where the subject is until a little bit later. That's a possibility, and that's involved in more complex sentence structures in Spanish, and sometimes also generally with questions. Another possibility in Spanish is when the subject seems absent, right? If I said to my friend, compraste un suéter, did you buy a sweater? I would omit the you, because in Spanish, verbs are specific to subjects, right? So you remember whenever I was saying, if I say, I speak, you speak, we speak, all three of those individuals are using the exact same form of the verb. Well, in Spanish, that's actually not possible. Each of those individual verbs would be tailored to fit the subject. So because there's only one possible verb for each possible subject, in Spanish, it's very common to omit the subject completely and not even say the subject as a part of the sentence. And it's not necessarily completely omitted, more like understood, right? The subject is simply understood. Here's another example, right? Mari Carmen compra un suéter y lo regala a Teresa. So Mari Carmen bought a sweater and she also gave it to Teresa, right? Now here, I've listed some conjunctions that might be helpful to you. Y, which means and, o, which means or, and pero. But in Spanish, the conjunction is what determines whether or not there's a comma oftentimes. So if you use the conjunction of y, in general, although not all the time, but in general, there will be no comma. If you use the conjunction o, in general, there's also no comma. If you use the conjunction pero, there will always be a comma. So those are some kind of general rules to remember. Another thing that's important about these conjunctions, and this is just a kind of a note, is that they don't mean exactly the same thing in English as they do in Spanish. So y is an inclusive pronoun or an inclusive conjunction, right? That would mean and, but o, which would mean or, is not exclusive. So that is to say, in Spanish, when we use o, it can include other possibilities. In English, when we use the word or, we're using it to exclude. Do you want the blue or the green one? We're excluding, right? If you want the blue one, you're not going to get the green one. If you want the green one, you're not going to get the blue one. You're either going to get one or you're going to get another. So in English, we use or when we're trying to exclude one possibility from another possibility. In Spanish, that is not actually how that works. The word o can be inclusive. If I said, ¿quieres el azul o el verde? There is also a third possibility understood there that you could get both if that was your choice. So that's something to also kind of remember, is that sometimes words don't actually exactly have the same meaning. Mari Carmen compra un suéter para Teresa, pero Teresa lo regala. No? So here, right, we have again, so we have in this first sentence, right, we had subject, verb, verb, right? So we had the same subject and two different verbs. Here we have subject, verb, and so we've split the sentence into two different things, right? But again, we're still following that English language and also a common Spanish language methodology of putting the subject, the verb, and then the complement. Here, I've just noted the difference in word order for descriptives and possessives, as well as some other forms, but those are the two that we're going to focus on right now. Descriptions in Spanish always come after the noun. Here, la casa grande y moderna, the house, big and modern. So in Spanish, the description is always going to come after the noun. Not only is the description always going to come after the noun, but it will agree with the noun, if possible, in gender and also in number. So if I had more than one house, I would have an S on the end of both of these words to indicate that the houses, right, are big and also modern together. Now, in English, we don't do this because objects have gender neutrality, but in Spanish, we do because objects all have genders. And they not only have gender, but they also have quantity. That is to say, they have a certain number of things, right? So they have to agree in a singular, plural, but also in gender, in masculine and feminine. Now, here's the second thing that is also different from English. It's that possessives always come after whatever they're talking about. So right here I wrote, es de Juan. In English, we would say, it's Juan's backpack. But in Spanish, we would say, es la mochila de Juan, right? It's the backpack of Juan. And this is always the case. Possessives will never come before the noun. So these are some things to remember whenever you're putting together your sentences in Spanish. Questions can be a little bit different, and they have a different kind of working than the way that we work them in English. So here, right, and also kind of exclamatory remarks, there are some other ways of calling them, but that's what we'll call them for now. For example, if I wrote, oh no, it's out of control, you notice that I only have one exclamation mark at the very end of the sentence. In Spanish, this is not the case. In Spanish, we have always two exclamation marks, one that goes at the beginning and one that goes at the end, and it encapsulates the part of the sentence that we are exclaiming about. Ay, se fue volando. So both of these, right, have two different exclamation points, right? One at the beginning and one at the end. It's the same with questions. Questions have an upside down question mark and a right side up question mark in Spanish, unlike in English, right? If we would write a question in English, how are you? We would have a question mark at the end to indicate that it's a question. If, on the other hand, in Spanish, we were asking a question, right? ¿Cómo te va? Or ¿Cuánto estudias tú? We would put a question mark at the beginning and also at the end. I don't know if you noticed, but here is an example of where the subject was absent because it's understood. And in this question, we have a verb and then a subject at the end, right? So it's reversed, that word order, which actually doesn't exist in English. Now, one last thing that you have to remember with regards to sentences has to do with negation. In Spanish, we have something that we call double negation. In English, we never do double negation, but in Spanish, it is actually quite common. So in English, we wouldn't say, I don't never go to the store. But in Spanish, we would probably say this. And that's actually quite common. So you see here, we have singular negation in these sentences in English. I didn't know. She could not see. He never works out. But in Spanish, we would have probably double negation. Now, negation always comes before the verb, right? So the no, you see how the negation comes after the verb in English? The negation in Spanish always comes before the verb. It's very important to know that the negation is always going to come before the verb. So here we have some double negation. No lo supe. I didn't know, right? But the no comes before the verb. No, ella no lo vio. no, she didn't see it, right? But I have some double negation. And here the no, the most important no, right, which is this one. This is the one I can't exclude. This one comes before the verb. And here's one last example, right? He never, which is nunca, right? He never works out. No, nunca hace ejercicio, right? I have a double negation, but again, nunca is coming before the verb to indicate that it's something that he never does. So those are some things to kind of remember if you're thinking about putting sentences together in Spanish. You can use the subject-verb complement order. That's a common way of putting simple sentences together in Spanish. So you're more than welcome to use that. Remember, right, that descriptives are always going to come after the noun. So all your adjectives are going to come after the noun. Even if there's more than one, you'll just make a list of them after the noun. Remember, they also have to agree with the noun in gender and also in quantity. And remember, the possessives also are going to come after the noun. In questions, it's common for the other type of subject verb order to be found, right? So in questions, it's actually quite common to have the verb first and the subject second, or at times to have the subject be absent because it's understood. And lastly, remember that when you are negating something or saying that you don't like it, unlike in English where the negation comes after the verb, the negation is always going to come before. These are just some helpful tips to help you in constructing your sentences in Spanish. I hope that they help, and I will see you next time.